My name is Aaron Ladd, host of the Chiefs Squad Show here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm not sure we learned much, if anything, at the NFL Combine in 2026. We will parse through what we did learn in this new episode.
And I'm JC Pearson. It's about time we start talking about the Trent McDuffie situation. You got to pay the man, but we'll talk about it.
And I'm Darren Smith. The question is the combine still worth going to if you're an athlete when a lot of athletes are doing their stuff at their own pro days, at the college pro days?
And I'm Chris Clark from Locked On Chiefs. And the big question is it best pick at 9 or do they look at something specific?
Chiefs Kingdom, stand up. It's the Chiefs Squad. Everything Kansas City Chiefs every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from Arrowhead Stadium, the way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Squad up. The Chiefs Squad Show starts now.
It is the final Chiefs Squad Show for the month of February 2026. We appreciate you making us part of your week, part of your day, part of your month, whatever it is. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. Special shout out to our first listens and those who listen every day to every show here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Here's what we got on today's docket. The NFL Combine rolls on from Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis. How it impacts the Kansas City Chiefs, who currently pick at number 9. Has our thinking changed around number 9? You know, we talked a little bit about it at the end of the regular season. Now we're a little bit deeper into the offseason ahead of the draft. We'll discuss our thinking at number 9, Combine or Pro Day, which is more important, as well as our deep dive on Trent McDuffie, the Chiefs cornerback. I don't think he's going to play under that 5th-year rookie extension we'll discuss in this episode. Any y'all want to chatter before we get straight to this Combine updates? Y'all got any opening thoughts?
Nah, let's get right into it, man.
All right, the NFL Combine is on, and I was looking at it today. It was D linemen and some other positions that took to the on-field stuff. Obviously, the interviews and the stuff behind the scenes important as well. JC, you sent a little message in our chat, and that'll be our jumping off point here. This is not is not entertaining to you, man. You don't care about the underwear Olympics.
You know, this is especially for the D linemen. I caught myself. I was like, why am I watching these D linemen run 40-yard dashes? How stupid is that? You know, if you got them running, you know, you're timing them in the 10, which is great, or maybe the 20, but 40-yard, come on. And then later on, I caught myself watching them doing like linebacker drills, really. I'm like, how stupid is this that you got these defensive linemen and these ends dropping like linebackers? You're not going to do that. If you're going to draft a defensive end because of the way he dropped in coverage and caught the ball, boy, I guarantee you'll be drafting real high next year.
I can't really argue that. I mean, look, I've been to a couple of them. Of course, JC did the combine himself. And so for me, just, you know, it's it's kind of offensive because think about it. When are you going to see these players in there, as JC says, in their underwears running on the football field for 40 yards or any type of yards? You know, you should be doing the combine in the manner in which you're going to be performing on the field. And so the fact that they have them doing this is just really strange. And I think it's by time that they do something different. But what do I know?
And, you know, the thing about the combine is it's different now than – and some teams don't even go anymore. I think the Rams, they don't even go anymore. But, you know, a lot of these guys from the time that their season is over, some don't even play in bowl games. They just train for this. So they're, you know, you're not running like you're running in a football game. You know, you're training for, like you said, the Olympics, shorts Olympics, you know, and so you're not really playing football. You're training for all these. So your time now is not going to be what you're going to run in training camp, and it's not the way you run. When you watch these guys run, you see the long strides. They're running sprints basically, but there's not football. You don't run like that because you need to change directions. You need to move. You need to cut. You don't take long strides like they're doing now. So it's kind of, you know, it's deceiving in a sense, but it's just the way, you know, you can't fault them and their agents because, you know, they've got these people that are looking at just the numbers, but it doesn't tell you if they can play football or not.
I think the interesting thing about the combine and the thing that really sticks out to me when you start talking about having it in Indianapolis and there's been talk about trying to go other places, you have a set schedule. You have, all the medical stuff that you need in one place. You have everybody in one area and being measured by one team, by one, situation, and everything set up the same, which I think actually kind of helps in some regards when you're starting to look at some of this stuff. But you start looking at some of the measurements that came out, and Ruben Bain and Cassius Howell, with arms under 31 inches long. How much is that going to change things? For Ruben Bain, I don't know that it changes things for him. Does it change anything for Cassius Howell? Maybe. But you look at the tape, and it doesn't really seem to matter in a scenario in my mind for Ruben Bain, because look at what the Chiefs have done in the past. Look at what they did with Trent McDuffie, a guy that doesn't have long arms, that doesn't fit their normal what they would look for in a DB, and they went out and drafted him. He's been a great player. I know we're going to talk about him a little bit later, but you have to wonder if that's really going to be something the Chiefs are going to care about. But the thing that actually I think is a huge deal that actually happened at the Combine is you talk about Jermaine Johnson and Devondre Sweat getting traded for each other. That doesn't normally happen with one-on-one player trades, but you also are in a situation where that probably also means that the Jets are now going to take a defensive end. So is that one less player the Chiefs would have available at 9 with the Jets probably locked in going that direction?
I saw a couple things with Bain, though, that two teams reportedly, and Schefter put out that two teams reportedly had his arms at over 32 inches.
Yep.
Here's the ridiculous part of the combine that I just can't get with. Everybody's got their own stopwatch. Everybody's got their own measurements. One guy's going to do a pro day. I know we'll talk about that. Then the teams will host guys for individual visits. I feel like it's a tent pole. It is a data point, if you will, for all these prospects, but it's not the end all be all in a way when you look at these prospects and say, oh, he ran this at the combine. Can't look. We're taking him off our boards. Now, if he has a bad interview or maybe the personality things don't line up, which is some of the things we saw with Shedeur Sanders last year, where the interviews and maybe some things teams take him off the board. But I just can't get too excited about the combine. I can't.
And I'll tell you about that is that, the combine, like Chris was saying, is just it's a gathering where, you have all your medical people, you have your coaching staff, you have a scouting department, but all of these tests and all of these things, these drills, they've done before. Their scouting department has done those things. When you're in college, you have a pro day every spring. You have a pro day before the season starts. So all these measurables, all these things, the scouting department already has it. This is an opportunity for your medical team to see them, your executives, your GM, your head coaches, because they don't go to those individual school workouts, in the spring and then in the summer and that. So that's kind of more for these guys. But all these numbers that are coming out, they already know those things. That's why when I heard earlier that Bain wasn't going to measure or whatever, you've been measured how many times already at Miami? They already know what they know, so what difference does it make at this point? And I do think if you have, if his arms, I don't know how his arms grew 2 inches or inch and a half, I don't know how that happened. So there's going to be some questions about all of that kind of stuff, or what are the length of his arms, but it does matter at that position because you're going up against tackles whose reach is much longer than yours. And a lot of that pass rush is predicated on who gets their hands and locks out first, as opposed to different than with Trent. And the defensive back, it's much less important when you talk about arm length than you do a rusher and an offensive tackle, because the first guy that locks out is typically the guy that wins. Anybody?
Oh no, I was waiting on Aaron to add that. I didn't know if he had a question for anybody.
Oh.
I don't disagree. What you said was actual, so kind of hard to debate that.
The Chiefs reportedly meeting with some of these guys too. Brett Veach there, Andy Reid not there. I know we talked about his press conference last episode, but said he's having the knee procedure and he's not going to be there. Does that impact how anything changes? And the funny thing is, Andy loves to do this whole, Oh, that's Brett and his team. Brett and his team, they've got it locked up.
That's literally what I was going to say.
I stay hands off with all that personnel stuff. Brett and his guys have it handled. I have no doubt in my mind that despite Andy Reid being, in rehab and getting the knee back to 100%, he's still very involved in the process. He's FaceTiming the guys. He's messaging the guys. He's just as tapped in. Don't fall for that.
That's what the cell phones are for.
Squad show audience. Yo, we got to be smarter than that. Don't let Andy Reid fool y'all with the whole, oh, no, that's Brett and his team. We ain't doing that.
Wow. No, I agree. That's again, that's why they have cell phones. Andy Reid knows what he's doing. That's why, he didn't have to be there because they're going to report back to him anyway. If there are particular players that he likes, they're going to obviously scout those players and interview those players because that's who he probably wants.
I'll turn it this way, Chris. You're a combine guy. If there's a guy on your board pre-combine that you're saying, hey, I'm keeping my eye on him, do they make major moves based on their combine performance? Or do you just say, hey, it's a data point, we'll see what happens in pro day? I guess, are you really making drastic changes to what the evaluations are based on what they do in Indianapolis?
When you're talking data points, as in measurements and speeds and all that kind of stuff, no, probably not. But it's the data that you're not going to have otherwise, which is the interviews with the players, meeting with the players, talking to, the different agents that are there and everything else that goes on at the combine. The medicals specifically for some players could be huge if they're coming off some sort of injury, because you get a look at it now. And if you bring them in for a visit, you can get another look at it in a couple months and you have an idea of how they're progressing in their injury. So when it comes to most of the measurements, no, I don't think it's really going to change much. It is a data point, as you guys have said. But I do think that there are some things, and I think the thing that makes it important and why teams like it is because you're supposed to be all on the same page and getting the same information versus talking about all the pro days, which we're going to talk about in the next segment, and having necessarily somebody else timing that could be a different time or measuring that could make it look differently for a measurement. When you're talking about Ruben Bain having 1.5 inches longer arms than they just measured at the combine. That's some of that stuff doesn't make sense. So having it all together in one place should help with that.
JC, you're the only person on the panel that's been in the combine, that's gone through the rigors. What are those interviews like? What are they asking? What are they revealing, I guess?
It's been a long time and a lot of things have changed and a lot of things stayed the same too. But they're just trying to get a feel for the individual, the player, and see if he's going to fit in the locker room. Is he not? Is he going to fit with the coaching staff? Is he a hothead? They'll put some guys on the whiteboard and have them diagram whether it's some defenses. What did you do in this coverage? What were your responsibilities? If it's offense, the same thing, just to see their level of IQ of football. Because, when you get to that level, everybody has talent, physical talent. But what is separating this guy, and good or bad? He can be a talented individual, but not very bright. And it's not worth the risk because we don't think he can pick up our scheme from week to week or whatever the case may be. So, everybody's got their own agenda to try to figure out and see if this particular guy is going to fit what they're trying to do. But, a lot of the medicals now, just that kind of stuff, the on the field stuff. Like I said, today was really a joke seeing those defensive linemen doing the things they had them doing. It made no sense really. And if you talk to a lot of guys who've been through it, they'll tell you the same.
Jason, let me ask you, just for our audience sake, what are they hoping to see with the time of those defensive linemen and even offensive linemen when they have them do the 40?
It makes no sense. It's just that they've been doing it forever. So they continue to do it. Why? When are you going to have a lineman run a straight 40, down the field? When? There is no play where, is he chasing somebody down or whatever? Hopefully that's not a good thing. And that's still not a straight line.
Right.
But he's in pads, he's taped up, knees are taped up, ankles are taped up. So what is that really telling you? What you're trying to figure out with those guys is their get off. How fast are they getting off the ball to get past those offensive tackles? So, the 10-yard burst or whatever, the shuttle, change directions, that kind of stuff. Yeah, you can learn some stuff from that. But, the bottom line is don't take too much from this. Turn on the tape, and again, your scouting department has seen these guys a number of years. And so if there's any surprises out there, then you need to take that up with your scouting department, because obviously somebody's not doing what they're supposed to be doing. But, right now, like Chris was saying earlier, it's just an opportunity for your medical staff to see everybody at one place, your coaching staff to see everybody, your personnel, your player personnel guys, just to see everybody, to validate your thoughts, to validate the things that your guys have brought back to you. So, that's kind of what it is right now. But a lot of it is really a waste of time.
Let's take our first break here on the Chief Squad Show. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation around the NFL Scouting Combine. Is it more or less valuable than individual pro days? We'll be right back. Stick with us. Have you ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into a reality with their NBA sweepstakes. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in. I love futures this time of year, whether it's picking a team to win the championship or grab a conference title. It adds that extra layer of excitement to every game down the stretch. And now, not only can your pick cash, but it could also send you to the finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. We are back in on the Chief Squad Show here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Aaron Ladd, JC Pearson, Chris Clark, and Darren Smith talking some NFL scouting combine. Here's the one thing I want to continue our conversation here as it relates to kind of the draft process and the combine versus pro days. What if it's not just about evaluating the prospects and how they handle the on-the-field stuff, but about evaluating the structure and how they can handle life as a professional football player as a whole? When we're talking about the NFL scouting combine, somebody mentioned this before, there's a schedule set out for you. You got to be here at this time. You got to do this at this point. You got to talk to media at this point. We got to interview with players at this point, or with coaching staff at this point, team personnel. And it kind of is a mock interview, mock run through, or kind of an evaluation of how you're going to handle professional life versus kind of the pro days where you're around kind of the same environment and ecosystem that you've been around 3 or 4 years, maybe 1 year in some cases with the transfer portal. You're around your guys, you're around your coaches. They can kind of mask some of your weaknesses and really shine a bright spot on what your strengths are versus when you're at the combine, you're kind of out there in front of everybody. Everybody's meeting you for the first time as a prospect. That's kind of how my lens and how I look at it is, this combine test is kind of your first deep bath or dive into the NFL aspect or life. And the pro day is kind of more, hey, we're shining a spotlight on what your strengths and weaknesses are in college. I wonder what y'all think about that. Let's start with you, Darren.
I'll be honest. I used to kind of get offended when the top prospects didn't perform or didn't do the combine, and they always said that they wanted to go and just do their stuff at the pro days. But it kind of got me thinking. I actually don't mind that and kind of like that because it's also not only they're putting the spotlight on them, but they're putting the spotlight on their teammates who might not have been invited to the draft. Oh, I'm sorry, to the combine, because now you get to throw to receivers that you already have a relationship and accustomed to versus new receivers that you've never thrown to, never met before. And, depending on what happens at the combine, the receiver can make you look good or the receiver can make you look bad. Now, granted, it also works against the receiver as well. But when you have the pro days, obviously you'll have most if not all the teams that'll be there, all the scouts, And so not only are they looking at you, but they can also take a look at this wide receiver, this running back, or whoever, and have a grade on them that they probably would not have had before if you didn't have the pro day at your institution and only threw at the combine. So I actually like the pro day stuff now more so than I do the combine, because now, and it actually gets to me, it gets the teams out of their comfort zones by just, swirling on in the one city. Now you got to use your resources to go out and see everyone.
And we've seen coaches, I know the Chiefs have had coaches in the past, go and run some of the drills at the individual pro days, which gives them a heads up. They get in front of the players and they kind of get that vantage point of how they work. I think there's pros and cons.
But that's also
both.
with the coach's permission, because if you remember at Colorado last year, Deion kind of put somebody, no, that ain't how we do it over here. So it happens.
There's pros and cons to both. Chris, how do you look at it, pro day versus combine?
I mean, I think Darren makes a great point. You look at specifically quarterbacks and wide receivers, you're working with guys that you've worked with before, generally speaking, at the pro day. So that's going to help you. It should be something where it's a lot easier for you to perform and perform well. So, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And as Darren said, I mean, the NFL has to send out their own guys, or the teams have to send out their own guys. They have to, invest in going in. How many coaches are they going to send to a pro day? I mean, when you're talking about, a team like Ohio State, how many of your coaches are you going to want to go to see Ohio State? Because you're going to have a whole bunch of different positions that are going to be looking at to get drafted there. So it's just a question of, how do you do that? How do you split it out? But it kind of goes back to what I said before. I think the pro days make a lot of sense, but the combine is all about trying to get everybody together, and it's trying to make it easier for the NFL teams to get the measurements they want and to get the information and have all the prospects in one place. So that, from that perspective, helps the teams. Doesn't necessarily help the players as much.
JC, if I'm looking to hire you to play for my NFL team, though, and you're saying, hey, the lights are too bright at the combine, that's making me a little nervous, bro. The lights gonna get brighter from here on out. You got to perform, and I want to see that as early as possible.
Well, turn the tape on. Right.
Hello.
If you're good enough, that you're looking that hard at me right now, then you've seen the tape. You've seen something good already. And so we're just going to come in and validate it at the pro day. Why work out here and the pro day and risk injury, whatever, you risk injury, you risk whatever, whereas if I'm that good, then I can just do it at my pro day. I'm comfortable at my home, wherever it is, my indoor facility, around my guys, my coaches. Yes, there are going to be pro coaches there, but it's still my environment though. I'm comfortable, as opposed to, in Indianapolis, I'm in a hotel room. I may not have slept, I'm up early and I'm doing this, I'm doing that, in my pro day, I'm at home, I kind of control all of those things. So, it makes sense if you can, if you're good enough to, kind of warrant that. And if you are, then like Darren was saying earlier, you also help your other guys who maybe didn't go to the combine. Now they also get a look in front of these people too.
Here's another piece of the puzzle that I think is important around this part of the NFL offseason, pro days, combines. The coaches want to lock in on what are your habits like outside of game day, outside of the facility. This is the time where, for guys who have declared already, you've been working out, you've been practicing, you've been building this entire time to get yourself ready for this draft process. I want to hone in on what your practice habits are like. Do you dive into film outside of the office? Are you somebody that's a weight room monster? Or are you just a gamer? Or are you somebody that's disciplined? Who's the circle around you? Like we talk about with Rashee Rice and some of the other people. Like, this part of the process, the evaluation, pros and cons to both sides, combine and pro day. But like, how do you practice? Who are you outside of the walls when it's time for us to come together as a team? I think that those are other things that teams look at during this whole process.
But I don't think you're gonna get that in Indianapolis. I mean, because everybody's there, and so and a lot of players are probably meeting up for the first time as well. So if you're in Indianapolis, that's not going to give you a greater idea of how they are, away from the college, away from from the field, because you're kind of sequestered in a certain part of, Indianapolis and the hotel and the combine itself and then the interview rooms, and then you go back home. So, I mean, I don't really see – I think they get more from it if they travel to where you are, because then you get to talk to other people besides the coaches. You can talk to people, you can talk to administrators, their professors or whatever, just to see how they are, in the classroom and stuff like that, because that's what you really want to know, and you're not going to find that out, to me, at the combine. I don't know if you agree with that, JC, or not.
Oh, absolutely, man. And that's what I was going to say is, people think that the combine is the first time these people have seen these players or talked to these players. If these guys are good enough, their scouts have been on campus. They've watched them at practice.
They've talked to them.
They've talked to them. They talked to their coaches. They've talked to their high school coaches. They've talked to girlfriends. They've done their homework, their background. So this is not the first time, now this might be the first time that the head coaches and the general managers are speaking to these guys, but they have all these reports already prior to on these guys, and they're just trying to validate and make sure that what they have and what their scouts have come back with, they agree with. But they know how these guys practice. They know all of those things. And someone said earlier on one of the other shows, I don't know if it was Chris or Ryan, that talent overshadows some warts, right?
Some deficiencies,
some deficiencies, and those deficiencies can be personality wise or whatever. So if that player is good enough, they may overlook some of those things, but that believe me, they know everything that is there. And if they're thinking about a player, especially in the first round, they've done their homework over and over and over and talked to many people about them.
And think about it. You don't think the Raiders don't know everything that they need to know about Mendoza, especially knowing the amount of investment that they're going to put into him? I mean, they don't need him to throw at the combine,
right.
when they've seen what he can do. Like they said, turn on the tape.
Tape talks, but the combine is important as well. Chris, let's hop back in here as far as this pro day versus combine conversation. What are some specific names or names that you're watching, or maybe the audience should keep their eyes on as the combine ends out before our next episode?
I mean, there's going to be a lot of different players. You look at today's performances. Sonny Styles is a guy that stood out. I don't know that really fits Kansas City and somebody that can come in and play for this Chiefs team just based on his skill set and the fit in the system. But he had a huge day today. I mean, you're going to be looking at the running backs, the wide receivers over the next couple of days. Yep. How are all those guys going to come in? Are they going to, are they going to run? Are they going to do the drills on the field? Are they going to be doing those types of things? That's what you're going to be looking for. You'll have offensive linemen in the last day. I don't know that Kansas City is really going to be too focused on that. They may be looking for another offensive tackle. We'll see how that turns out. But, overall, it's just a matter of what information can you get. And the bigger thing, and I think, I kind of said this before, and some of you guys have said this too, it's talking to the players. It's getting the information from the players and having, one-on-one conversations, trying to figure out, is this guy going to fit into my locker room? Is he going to fit into the team? Does the personality fit with what we already have? That's really what you're going to be looking for when you start talking about the players to watch for. Are any of the wide receivers going to be somebody that you can feel good taking at 9, which we'll talk about a little bit later when we get into our last segment. But when you start looking at how this draft is going to be playing out, the Chiefs could be in a scenario where most of the guys that you will be wanting to pick are already gone. So that's going to be a big play into how this works out.
Brett Veach mentioned that he only saw a handful of guys with a first-round grade in this draft, which I thought was interesting and something to note.
Aaron, let me say it. Now, sometimes they say that because they want to talk down so other teams don't draft the players that they want. So, again, like we say with Andy Reid, take it with a grain of salt.
The two things that come to mind of recent memory when I'm talking about the combine or thinking of the combine, didn't Trey Smith's heart issue, wasn't that something that came up around combine time and impacted his draft stock? And now that Buffalo is going through all this stuff with Keon Coleman, the video of him in the interview room with Billy Beane and Brandon Beane and all of them, it's just so funny how things can go both ways. We obviously don't have full access to all the important things that are going on at the NFL Combine, but
again,
hindsight is 2020.
But to that point, sometimes, again, just like Brett talking about this certain players' first round grades, sometimes teams let stuff like that leak out so the player can drop in value. And now, a la Shedeur Sanders, 5th round draft pick. Okay, look, we don't have to give them at number 2. We got him as a 5th round grade, 5th round prospect. Now we paying 5th round money versus 1st round. So,
did Shedeur throw at the Combine last year?
Nope. But neither did Kim Ward, I believe. So,
all right, we will continue our Combine coverage later in the show. As for now, we are turning our attention to Trent McDuffie. Is it time to trade the Chiefs cornerback? You're listening to the Chiefs Squad Show here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Workplace chaos, deadline stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed, sponsored jobs help you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, expertise, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In just the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less time, less stress, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help you get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on the Chief Squad Show. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire. This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Chief Squad Show here on the Locked On Podcast Network, rolling right along on the last episode for the month of February 2026. My goodness, where has the time goes? Time flies when you're not in the playoffs.
Wow. Wow. Really?
Usually this time of year, we're like just cleaning up confetti. And, it's like celebratory. Darren Smith's getting another ring fitted. Instead, now we're deep diving on the NFL Combine and talking about a potential trade for Trent McDuffie. Brett Veach talked about him at the podium. First thing he said was this was the first order of business, and that's discussing Trent McDuffie, who's currently guaranteed fully $13 million under this 5th-year option. Now, I think everybody on this panel, and it's widely expected that he's not going to play under that 5th-year option under $13 million. So Veach agrees that contract extension talks are picking up in Indianapolis. But is it time to consider some trade talks? When you consider how the Chiefs have valued cornerback position in the past, a la L'Jarius Sneed, names before that, and what the cap crunch they're currently under, would a trade make the most sense for best parties involved? Trent getting his money and the Chiefs getting some relief and possibly moving forward. Let's start with you on this one, Chris, and we'll go around the horn.
I think it makes a lot of sense to at least have the conversation. And the question is what can you get for him? I don't necessarily want to trade Trent McDuffie, but I think the reality is that it depends on what his market is and what he thinks his market is. If he thinks he can get $30 million a year, should Kansas City be paying him $30 million a year? I wouldn't. But will some other team be willing to do that? Possibly. That's really the big question is where does he feel like he fits in that salary cap market? If it's 20 to 25 million, then yeah, maybe you can get a deal done, but it's going to be really hard if you're going top of market to a corner that's probably not. I would say he's probably close to top 10 easy, but the value considering his best position is inside versus out is going to be a little bit questionable as well.
I'm looking at some of the numbers here. Sauce Gardner, $30 million a year. Derek Stingley, $30 million. J.C. Horn, $25. Jalen Ramsey, $24. Surtain, $24. That's the top end as far as average value per year at the cornerback position. Darren, what you got?
I respectfully disagree with Chris when it comes to where he probably ranks. I think Trent is top 5, period, because he's a 2-time All-Pro. That's, top 2 or top 4, depending on if you're first or second team. And the fact that he's done it not once but twice. Now, the Chiefs actually got caught a relief because the raise and the incentive only counts when it's a Pro Bowl, not an All-Pro selection, which is kind of ass backwards if you ask me, because it's much harder to make an All-Pro than it is a Pro Bowl. That being said, I do agree with Chris that, yes, the conversation should be had, and it probably has to be had. The Chiefs have been drafting a lot of defensive backs ever since Steve Spagnuolo has been here. And, you look at what Javarius Ward did, when he moved on as a free agent to San Francisco and has played well with them. You look at L'Jarius Sneed, they transition tagged him. He got the big contract with Tennessee. Now, granted, it may not play out well like that, but he got his money because of his knee situation. I'm above the adage that Brett Veach normally likes to take care of players that he's drafted that actually have performed well. But sometimes the math is the math, and no matter how I feel about Trent as a player and as a person, it's still a business at the end of the day. So I can see a scenario where they could get something for him. Now, what would it be? I think Sauce Gardner got what, 2 firsts or whatever for him from the Colts. I mean, to be quite honest,
you're not getting 2 firsts from McDuffie.
No. I get that. I'd give him up for 2 firsts, but can you get a first and a second, or second and a pick next year or something like that? Perhaps if you can, obviously get some more cap relief in said trade, and you got to figure out a way to replace them, because again, if you let them go, what are you doing about Watson? Because Watson's going to command some money as well. So you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you leave Steve Spagnuolo with replacements on both ends. So I'm torn right now on that scenario.
Well, first of all, Trent needs to get his money.
Big facts.
If it's here, somewhere else, more power to him. He's played his way into that. Does he deserve it? Yes. Is he as good as those other corners? I'd stack him up against any of those guys, because how many of those guys that you named play inside also? So Trent is an outside corner, and Chris, you said that his best position is inside. I don't know how you can say that. Through the time that he's been here, he's had one bad game, and that was against the Cowboys on Thanksgiving. Other than that, when has he had a performance that wasn't a winning performance? Yes, you get beat from time to time, but Sauce Gardner gets beat, no doubt about it. Pat Surtain gets beat. If you play that position, you will get beat. He's winning way more than he's getting beaten, and he can move down and play inside. How many of those other guys do that? That's what you want. So if you're going to move on from him, who are you going to get to replace him that is going to be able to fill those shoes? You talk about Charvarius. Charvarius was just an outside corner. Mm-hmm. You talk about L'Jarius. L'Jarius didn't play in the slot. L'Jarius was just an outside corner. So to compare those guys to Trent is not fair. Yes, those guys were good players. They went on and got good contracts, but Trent does more than those guys do. So, I would say, that's what you're looking for. Now, do the numbers work? Remains to be seen. Bottom line is, like I always say, I'm for the players. So, get as much as you can get, because believe me, when your performance starts to not be there, they're going to try to take some of that money back. So get it while you have the leverage, no doubt about it. But should they sign him? Yes. Can they sign him? Remains to be seen.
And I will say this, when it comes to what JC was talking about, the players, one of the things that I loved about talking to Trent after each game, and especially when they had L'Jarius Sneed here, they both took on the challenge of manning up the receivers. Now, I think L'Jarius always took the number one receiver. That was just how Spags had it drawn up, and I think L'Jarius actually he actually got snubbed not once but twice of Pro Bowl and All Pro honors because he locked receivers up. I think it was only one game, and that might have been where Travis had 4 catches, 4 touchdown catches, but 25 yards, and Devontae Adams, I think, had like 3 catches, had a touchdown and 125. That was probably the worst game that he had that season, but he was like he locked the number ones down. And when he left, Trent wanted to take on that role and being a lockdown corner. And I thought he did, like you said, outside of the Cowboys performance, he did a pretty good job. And so again, playing inside, outside, he was pretty good.
And now also remember that we had no pressure on the quarterback. So you're leaving these guys out a lot of times in zero coverage because Spags is trying to bring pressure. Whatever we did not get to the quarterback consistently. So now these guys are hung out having to cover even longer. So, I know when people break things down, they don't consider all of those things, but trust me, those things are a big factor when you're judging whether a cornerback can cover or not. He's not his own guy. He's a man-to-man cover guy that from the inside or the outside. So, he's what you're looking for.
Here's the risk, though, if you're Brett Veach. Does a trade of Trent McDuffie that nets maybe a 3rd and a 6th get you closer to winning a championship, or does paying Trent McDuffie and kind of tightening the cap and kind of constricting that keep you where you at right now, keep your floor at where it is? As this team has told us all offseason, they believe they're not that far away, 9 one-score games, yada, yada, yada. If they do find a way to get pressure on the quarterback, you still have that corner on the side that you believe in that can lock down a number one. If I'm making the decision, I know it makes it tougher to keep McDuffie and try to roster construct. But from a X's and O's and a Johnny's and a Joe's perspective, he's one of the best players in the league at that position. And it's going to be tough to duplicate that skill set through the draft or free agency.
At that position, because when you ask people too, what's the toughest position in football? Quarterback and cornerback, right? And
because cornerback is the only position you really got to run backwards on.
And then you run, and then now you have a guy that plays outside and inside, which is a totally different beast playing inside. That's why everybody doesn't move down to play inside. It's a totally different beast. And so for somebody to be able to do that, you have, 2 guys basically in one. But, again, the money has to fit. It remains to be seen. But, yeah, he deserves a contract. And whatever happens, I'm sure he's going to get his money one way or another. Now, the other question is, and they talked about the conversations, will you play on that 5th year? No, exactly. Why would you?
I do want to add something, but I want Chris to jump in too because I want to add something.
Go ahead.
Well, no, I was going to say, it is a business, but when we look at situations that we have with certain players, and I'm just going to use the name of Rashee Rice and some of these other players that have questionable, decision-making skills. Think about what you are at risk of losing and what you might end up bringing in. Jalen Watson, the community. Yeah, Jalen Watson and Trent McDuffie. You've never heard any. Look, I'm saying for someone who and Aaron knows, we get a chance to talk to them week in, week out. These are solid players, not only on the field but off the field. That is hard to replicate that. And sometimes, yes, you might, to me, you got to make the numbers work because you're getting the leadership on and off the field, man, that you just can't buy. You can't replicate that.
They worried about winning games. I hear you. I understand it. I've always thought that Trent McDuffie was a stand-up guy. He's the one standing 10 toes down in the locker room when they have a poor defense.
Trent help you win 2 Super Bowls too. Where's the loyalty? Not
necessarily his job, but this is from an organizational standpoint. This is a position that they don't really invest in. Can y'all name the last cornerback that they paid and locked up after? It just seems like this is a position where they get the most, they squeeze the most out of the orange, they drink the juice, and then they move you on.
I will say the one thing that the Chiefs have going for them in this case is they have been pretty good at drafting in that position for the most part. They've been very good at finding corners that can come in and play. I'm not saying you're going to be able to find a Trent McDuffie, But the reality is can you make it work under the salary cap? And I'm not trying to compare Trent McDuffie, the player, to a guy like Tyreek Hill. But when you start looking at numbers, the reason the Chiefs didn't pay Tyreek Hill is because he won on top of market. I don't know that you're going to get very many players that are going to be on this team outside of Patrick Mahomes, who isn't even top of market, or Chris Jones at top of market at their position. Like, that's just not generally the way the Chiefs have been building their roster. I like Trent McDuffie as a player. I think he's fantastic. I think that he does bring a lot of leadership, and he gives you the ability to do multiple different things on the back end. But can you justify paying him $30 million when that $30 million could go and get you 3 or 4 different pieces? That ends up being the question.
Yeah, but you're throwing that number out, like, like the top of the, who knows that he's wanting to be paid as the highest paid corner, or, he may be satisfied with being, top 5, top 10, who knows, that's where the negotiations come in. But, he's going to, if I'm him, I'm going to ask for as much as I can get. But, they've got to be realistic too. Is it going to be the biggest contract in history? Probably not. Right. So, to put that out there and say that, that's what it's going to take to sign him, I would rather wait and see exactly where those numbers are. But, if he was a guy that was loud and boisterous, like a Sauce Gardner or even a Surtain, who's, he's boisterous, loud. He's not, not like a Dion, people will think more highly of him because they like the loud guys, the boisterous guys that I lock him up. Trent doesn't do any of that. Trent is, right, to probably, to his demure
detriment,
or whatever, detriment. Yeah, that detriment. Thank you. CTE kicked in there a little bit, but yeah, to his detriment, because if he was a loud, boisterous corner like most of us are, people would think a lot more highly of him because he, but he's a quiet guy, goes about his business, handles his business, and does it well, and kind of flies under the radar, but gets it done.
One thing I will say,
Creed Humphrey is top of market. I think
you're
Humphrey
right. I apologize.
Is the highest paid center.
You are correct. I apologize. And I think Trey Smith may have even been there as well, or at least really close. I will say this. If he would take a contract like what you have J.C. Horn signed or Jalen Ramsey at 24, 25, run and get that deal done in a heartbeat.
Yeah. Is he better than J.C. Horn?
Yes.
So why take what J.C. Horn is getting?
But that's my point. Like, if you start getting to a point where you're starting to talk $30 million, I think that becomes something that is not going to be the Chiefs are going to be willing to do. We will see, but that's just my guess. And I have heard different people talking about the fact that they're thinking that he's expected to be wanting the $30 million a year. And if that's the case, I don't see him in Kansas City long term. I think that's going to end up being a trade.
Let's hit a break really quick, but by say of I, who thinks Trent McDuffie will be a Kansas City Chief in 2026?
I do.
Okay. Darren and JC, and then Chris and I have on a different team. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll discuss number 9. What will Kansas City do at 9? You're listening to the Chief Squad Show here on the Locked On Podcast Network. As the new year gets going, a lot of people are trying to simplify their routines, and dinner is a big one. Between busy work days, cold winter nights, and packed schedules, having an easy, reliable dinner plan makes a huge difference. That's where Home Chef comes in. Home Chef takes the stress out of cooking by delivering fresh, pre-portioned ingredients right to your door with easy-to-follow recipes that actually taste great. They're rated number 1 by users of other meal kits for quality, convenience, value, taste, and recipe ease. And it's easy to see why. Recipes are simple but feel elevated, even restaurant quality, with dishes co-created by chefs like Gordon Ramsay. Everything arrives pre-portioned, so there's less prep, less mess, and no wasted food. Saves time and money. Home Chef customers save an average of $86 per month on groceries. For a limited time, Home Chef is offering our listeners 50% off their first box free shipping, and free dessert for life. Just go to homechef.com/lockedon. That's homechef.com/lockedon for 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Must be an active subscriber to receive free dessert.
Good job, man.
Hey, y'all see it. February, we stepped it up, right? We started to get the ad reads back in line. Final segment for the month of February 2026 here on the Chief Squad Show. Aaron Ladd, JC Pearson, Chris Clark, and Darren Smith. Let's turn our attention to the NFL draft, which I believe is like a few days away from being a month away. We're almost a month shy of the NFL. Where is the NFL draft this year? They moved it around so much I can't keep up.
I don't know, but the draft is in April.
Yeah, it's in
Cleveland,
2 months
isn't
away.
it? Is it Cleveland or
I'm sorry.
Green Bay?
Pittsburgh?
Actually,
Huh?
Pittsburgh,
I don't know
maybe?
where it is.
Pittsburgh. I think it's Pittsburgh.
Yeah, Pittsburgh. Yeah.
Yeah, Pittsburgh. Yeah.
April. Maybe I'll know what month it is by that time. The draft is in April, last week of April. Kansas City currently holds the number 9 pick in the first round. I believe 5 total picks overall.
Only 5?
No, 6.
6?
Yeah, they have 6.
I'm gonna put myself in a timeout for this segment. Y'all got it from here. What are we thinking at number 9?
Man, I mean, I'm starting to be like,
It's tough.
Way Chris is talking, it might be best available. Jeez, I don't know.
Yeah, you know what? I was thinking back to some of the things that Darren had put out the other day and talking to some other people. And, you know, he was talking about the tackle situation. You know, would it be better to you know, and then with Brett Veach talking about the 3 inside guys, didn't mention anything about the tackles, right? He was like, we got these 3 inside guys and named them, you know, so obviously he's not feeling great about the tackle situation. But if you get 2 bookend tackles, you know, does that make everything better? If you have a top-notch offensive line, does that make the running game better? So you don't need a running back at 9? Do you protect Pat better? So does that make the receivers better? You know, you can make a case either way, you know, but that tackle is going to be on the field every play and playing every play. And hopefully, you know, the last year's pick, Simmons, it comes back and he's healthy and he's, you know, all in. I don't know, you know, does that I don't know. There's a lot of different ways to go.
Do the Chiefs have 1 bookend tackle currently?
I think you can ride with Simmons if he's there mentally. You know, I know he had some personal issues or whatever, but prior to that, he was playing really well. And, you know, as a young guy too, a rookie, first-year guy, you would think that he's going to get much better because you make your biggest jump year 1 to year 2. You would think he would, you know, he would be better there also. Pole played well. He could be the swing guy. And, man.
Oh, they did real well, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, if you do that and you solidify with those 3 inside guys that Veach was talking about, and now you have, you know, a really, really stout offensive line, that makes everything better, doesn't it?
And to be honest, follow up on what JC's saying, I mean, we have talked about, okay, could they bring Jawan Taylor back? But we seem to forget, and I guess I did actually until just a few months ago, we did sign Jalen Moore last year from San Francisco on a 2-year deal. Let's get our money's worth out of him too. You know what I'm saying? I mean, let's you know, and I think they brought him in. I guess they initially brought him in for left tackle as well. So
He stepped in when Simmons was out. He stepped in when Simmons was out last year.
Yeah. I mean, and look, and I was texting, I think the group or JC earlier, that, you know, it's not that I'm not convinced on Simmons, but it's like, you know, I look at, this is just my opinion. When it comes to left tackle for the Chiefs, I need somebody that has the nastiness of a Trent Williams protecting Patrick Mahomes. You know, I mean, you coming down with a boom box and you thugging. I don't get that. I don't get that from Josh. I mean, and to be quite honest, the biggest thing, the biggest issue that I have, and I understand it was a personal matter, but to leave the team and your teammates for a month. Now, granted, they probably know what went down, but in the manner in which it took place, where they didn't know if or when he was coming back, while they're in this conundrum of whether or not they can make a playoff run or not, and he's not there. I talked to some people from Ohio State that covered him over the years, and they kind of have some questions about his mental capacity as well when it comes to stuff like that off the field, and not being there for his teammates. So again, and plus when I look at him in the locker room, I don't see the intimidating factor that you look at when you see a Trent Williams. Nice kid. I
think it's an incomplete grade on Simmons as far as his rookie year, and whether that impacts your evaluation to where you want to take a tackle at 9. Sure, I get it. I mean, we're judging off data points, and there just simply weren't enough data points with Simmons last year to feel like you have one of those lockdown tackles that JC is talking about. As far as I'm concerned, y'all know exactly where I'm going at number 9. Brett Veach set it up there. You got to get more efficient in the run game. There's a running back out there that can play the fit, was a finalist for the Heisman Trophy. I don't know if he's going to be there, but if he is there at 9, it's a no-brainer. There was the report that came out this week where our guy Nate Taylor that was, the Chiefs were so close to Breece Hall. Let's just put all of these problems to bed. Go get your running back at 9. I don't care about the value and all this. If the guy works out and contributes on Sundays and takes some of the pressure off Patrick Mahomes, it's a win.
But if you can't block, yeah. But if you can't block, does the running back really help? You know what I'm saying? If there's issues on the edges of blocking, and then what's a running back going to do for you?
So, Jason, let me ask you this.
I'm saying, yeah.
No. I was just going to ask, what did the film show with him at Notre Dame this year? So, I mean, I'm just, it's rhetorical. I'm not asking you per se because I don't know if you watched the games.
He's talking about the O-line blocking. You talking about the O-line blocking?
Yeah, I'm talking about the O-line blocking.
Oh,
yeah,
okay,
obviously he's
protection.
Oh, no. Obviously, he's a talented player, no question about it. But if you can't block for him, I don't care how talented you are, right? You can't break every tackle, and there's already one guy on every play that's unblocked. But if now your offensive line, other than those 3 inside guys, right, if you're not blocking everybody, if you're not blocking at the point of attack, is the pick worth it? Or do you get better at the point of attack, and now you may not need a guy that is Heisman Trophy candidate, whatever, all pro to make plays for you. And also that if you're stronger at the point of attack, do you protect Pat more? Give Pat more time to throw the ball. Does that make the guys outside better? So I mean, there's a lot of ways you can go with it.
Now, look, I'm sorry. I was going to toss this to you, Chris, because my biggest concern is I got to see what the Chiefs' salary cap looks like come March 11th, because what they do in free agency is going to give me kind of a heads up on what they're looking for in the draft, because I have to know, because before the draft, we'll know whether or not they go out and get a free agent running back, versus trying to draft one. So Chris, go, because that to me, that's my biggest question mark is what's their cap going to look like come March 11th when they have to be, compliant.
And again, Chris, I'm just throwing out that scenario. I don't know if there's even a tackle worthy at number 9. I'm just throwing that scenario out. So, you can talk to if there's any players out there that might fit that bill or not. I don't know.
At 9, I don't know. I mean, there's
I heard it wasn't a good year for tackles in this draft, Chris. Mm-hmm. Is that true?
There are a couple. Aaron is all about the running back. I see, and here's my problem with taking Jeremiah Love. Say what you want, but Andy Reid isn't going to run the ball more than 35 to 40% of the time.
Thank you.
Good luck on getting your money's worth out of a running back that you're going to be paying $5 million a year to, that is probably not going to save you more than about $2 million salary cap going out and signing a veteran like maybe Travis Etienne. Maybe Etienne gets more than $7 or $8 million a year, but the value just isn't there. So the one thing that Darren said, and this is really something that I wish we had a little bit more time to talk about, but the big thing that really stuck out to me that Veach talked about was, he said, Mike Dana, cutting Mike Dana was kind of, a no-brainer to an extent. That's kind of what he said. But then he said it's different with Juwan Taylor. And that's interesting because everybody seemed to think it was a foregone conclusion. There's no chance that Jawan Taylor is playing in Kansas City in 2026. I'm still not saying that he will, but what is the difference between Mike Dana and Jawan Taylor? Jawan Taylor still plays well at his position. Yes, he has penalty issues. Don't get me wrong, and that's frustrating, but he still plays well enough and doesn't give up a ton of pressure. Is somebody going to be willing to trade something for him for a $20 million contract for a guy that is protecting your quarterback? Maybe. Or is Kansas City going to be able to do something? Veach also threw a number out there. I think it was something like the Chiefs have $100 million, $106 million of convertible contracts.
I thought it was just 60, but I thought it was 60 million.
Well, but that's Chris Jones. Maybe that was already including Patrick Mahomes money that they've already converted. But there, he knows what that number is. So what are they going to do? To your question, Darren, how much space are they going to have? Are they going to do a move with Chris Jones? Are they going to do a move with Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, or a couple of guys that you could do? Are you going to make a cut with Drew Tranquil, Noah Gray, those types of guys? There's lots of different moves, and I think over the next couple of weeks, that's what we're going to find out, because one thing that the Chiefs generally have done is they have stayed out of cutting people before the combine, so they don't really have to talk about it until after free agency. So at this point, you would imagine that the cuts are probably going to be happening in the next week if they're going to make any, and any adjustments to the roster we'll find out about as well. So they can free up a ton of cap space. What do they go out and do with it? Are they going to go sign a free agent running back like Travis Etienne, who says that he wants to play in Kansas City? I mean, then you're sitting there at 9. Jeremiah Love really wouldn't be an option, which I still don't think he's a great option at 9 at this point. But, Ryan and I had a mock draft where they took a tackle at 16 because there was nobody left at 9 that you wanted to take. So you trade back to 16, you get an extra 30, you get 33 as your extra pick, and you take a tackle at 16, and you have bookend tackles for the next 5 years for the Chiefs. Because I do think they have a bookend tackle with Josh Simmons.
Oh, so that did come up. Oh, Aaron. A
lot of good conversation, a lot of variety of opinions on today's show. That's what makes our platform so good. We appreciate all the fellows for their contributions in February and beyond. We appreciate y'all at home, the listeners, for making us part of your week, day, and month. We will see y'all again next week, Tuesday and Thursday, live on YouTube at 7 p.m. KC time and in the podcast feeds immediately after. Any final thoughts, fellas?
Yeah, Chris, you let me go on and on about that when you guys had already talked about it. You should have said, hey, man, we had that same scenario. We had a tackle at 16. I could have saved a whole lot of breath, man.
Yeah, you did. We're just looking at a lot of different scenarios. Have a good one. Sorry.